Hi, I'm Jacqueline Ecker, and I'm the founder of Eating Disorder Hope. And today I wanted to share my recovery story with you. I struggled with some period of time with anorexia, but largely bulimia. And my eating disorder began when I was about 14. I really didn't appreciate that my pre-adolescent, adolescent body was changing, and that there was a very normal physical fat redistribution going on that's necessary to become a healthy woman. And I critiqued my body harshly and thought I should be much thinner. So I started dieting, and that was one of the catalysts for unlocking the eating disorder for me. Then I was successful, and I got a lot of positive feedback from folks about the weight I had lost, and I thought, wow, I am more glamorous, more popular. My friends are wanting to diet now too, so this is a wonderful thing. But unfortunately, eventually I lost the control I had with that diet and started binge eating. And then it led into a pattern of very controlled dieting to pretty significant overeating and binging. That went on for a number of years, and then I figured out bulimia. And that was a very dangerous moment of my life when I think back of all the risks I took with the electrolyte imbalances that can happen and cause heart problems, heart attack, and the potential to rupture your esophagus. So many issues that are so dangerous with bulimia. But I continued to practice that for years, and would also at the same time have a cycle in my life of sort of getting it together and getting a new job and doing well in school, getting A's, and then everything would start crumbling, and I would start binging again and purging and quit the job, and my grades would go down, or I would miss a bunch of school. And it was just very tumultuous time, and this really went on off and on between the time I was 14 and 28. The fallout of all this behavior was awful. My family relationships became extremely strained, to say the least, and I was pretty alienated from my family. I know I caused a lot of pain, a lot of suffering for my family with the emotional yelling and just sort of out of control behavior that I would engage in during that time when I was in a binging purging cycle. So very sad. Stopped and started some really awesome careers where I could have been pretty successful and had started out successfully, but then again would end up self-sabotaging myself with a huge eating disorder downslide. And after that, finally I hit sort of the bottom. I decided that I might not want to live anymore. This was just too miserable. And so I found out how to go into treatment for 30 days and leave my job, and figured out a way to pay for it, and got a little insurance help. Most of it I think was out of pocket, but I worked it out and paid it off as I went, kind of a thing. I paid it myself. And during that 30 days of treatment, it was good. I mean, this was many years ago. I'm now 38. And this was when I was 28. But when I went in, it was just that I had the desire to change. I had been so beat down by this thing. I was so sick of feeling, bloated, stuffed, and recovering from a binge and purge, and weak and emotionally all over the board, that I just wanted something to change. So I think that might have been the strongest thing I brought to treatment, readiness to change and a desire to get well. So in the treatment program for 30 days, I did a lot of group therapy, nutrition counseling, had supervised meals, supervised sessions afterwards to make sure I wasn't purging, and explored a lot of the underlying environmental issues that had happened in my life, some trauma, some relationship issues, things like that. I also came to understand that I had a real genetic predisposition towards an eating disorder, and anxiety and depression, and how those things fed into each other. So I was willing to look at many factors that had contributed, and I really wanted to change. So that was really the starting point. That 30 days was sort of like the line I drew in the sand, and I said, this is it, I'm getting better. Now, it was no, straight line of recovery. Unfortunately, it was like this, up and down, up and down. But I stayed the course. I kept, every time I'd fail, I'd get back on that horse. And after treatment, I worked with a therapist in an outpatient basis who specialized with eating disorders for 4 years very closely. And she and some other members of my team helped me develop coping skills in life, communication skills, boundary skills, self-acceptance skills, self-nurturing skills, reframing the way I spoke to myself and perceived my life, all these kinds of things. And gradually, I became better. After that, I decided to go back to school and become a therapist and use all this struggling that I'd had with my own eating disorder to hopefully help others, since that seemed like the most meaningful use of all that destructiveness and sufferings. Maybe I can turn this around now in my life and help some other people or be an inspiration. So I earned my bachelor's degree, and which had been a big struggle up until that point, because I could never stay in school long enough or be stable long enough between eating disorder bouts to get very far in my education. But I did. I completed the bachelor's degree far later than my peers, but it was done. And then I went on to get my master's degree in counseling psychology. And I have to say, in school people always said folks get psychology degrees, or a lot of the folks that get psychology degrees are the ones that really need the help, and they're just seeking healing on their own. And, that may be true for me. I learned so much in that program. It was awesome. But I also healed so much, looking at all these psychological, environmental, genetic issues from a sort of a third-person light in that psychology degree program. Really helped me to come to know myself. I would also say that the writing I did, I tailored most of my writing to be about eating disorders in some way whenever I could in the psych program, particularly my master's degree. And that was such a healing experience. And I didn't always write about, or in fact rarely wrote about my own experience, but just really coming to deeply understand eating disorders, how complex they are, how no one's to blame, and that there is recovery, but it's difficult, and it's okay to fail on your way to success, all that. So once the master's degree was done, I went into private practice and specialized in eating disorders, and that was wonderful and very fulfilling. There is just nothing like working with a client who's in recovery and seeing this glimpse of their soul when you're talking in a session. It is so beautiful and such a rare moment to see so deeply into someone and have them share that so authentically with you. And I was profoundly impressed with the beauty of the inner soul, which probably again helped me in my own recovery to go, oh yeah, this external body, this image I'm presenting isn't me. I mean, yeah, it's the physical me, but what's really me is my values, my character, who God made me to be. So I thought I would be a therapist forever. I was going to be in an old Victorian house with a hound dog laying at my side in a rocking chair and just work with clients. And that sounded like heaven. But what happened is I started this little website along the way to try to get some folks to go to my eating disorder support group. And it took off. Why, I have no idea, because I didn't have many technology skills at the time, but it did. And I took that start of the website and kept putting more information and resources, and really recognizing this need of so many people online that wanted to know about eating disorders or were suffering horribly, and that they found the online forum a nice place to learn about eating disorders, to share their stories. And also, because it's a sensitive issue and some people feel pretty self-conscious about it, they felt like they could have a little bit of anonymity, if you will. So that's pretty much the story. You know, along the way, the recovery went on and on and on. And I would say I'm still in recovery. I wouldn't say I've got it all figured out, but it's pretty good. I would say I'm about 98% there. I certainly don't practice bulimia anymore. I don't have anorexia. I have a pretty good body image. And I think I'm farther along emotionally and spiritually than I would have ever been without this eating disorder. Now, would I say that I would go back and choose that for myself? No, I'm not that noble. I wish I hadn't had it. It was so painful. It took so much from my life. But spilt milk, what I am focusing on is all the gifts I've obtained from that, and it has made me a very strong woman, very insightful woman, a woman who has respect for herself and her body, and a desire to contribute meaningfully to others, and a strong sense of who I am personally and who I am in God. And all of that's pretty powerful and valuable. So my recovery story has been a long one, but a good one, and this is a great place to be, and I wish it for everyone else seeking recovery. It is possible. You too can have a good life, and I wish this for you. Thanks for listening.